Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the no trace of the artist design style. This is one that I do quite a lot of in my own work, and it's one that I really like. It's a very minimalist style. It's almost like the tree has grown itself without any intervention at all. That's the kind of look we're going for with this design style. And it's one of those styles where you really need to keep in mind from the very beginning of your bonsai journey. Because once you start to prune a tree or start to wire it, you have to remember that all of those scars will remain on the tree forever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people really like the contrast that the white pruning scars make against the bark of a tree. But if you're going for a no trace design, then you have to try and avoid them or blend them into the tree over time. So today I wanted to go over some techniques that I use to try and get that no trace look. So firstly, let's talk about wiring. Wiring can really change the shape of a tree. We saw this in our last video when we were bending the branches of the Chinese elm. You can do some pretty drastic stuff with tree just by adding some wire and bending the branches. But the problem is, unless you have a deciduous tree that will grow out its leaves every year and potentially cover up the wire, is that wire will always be visible on your tree. Now there are ways around this. You can use natural materials such as vine or grapevine to try and hide the wire. This is what I'll often do on my Chinese elm. I'll use some grapevine to help hide the wire, or I'll tuck it in amongst the foliage. But even still, if you look closely, you can still see the wire underneath there. So what I like to do instead is whenever I wire a branch, I like to try and blend that scar in. So as you can see here, I've got these two branches coming out right here, and they're going to be a bit too close together if they carry on growing like this. So what I want to do is I'll wire them apart so that I can break them apart, and hopefully over time they won't join up again. And while I'm doing that, I'm also gonna try and blend that scar in with the rest of the branch. If you look here, you can see that there's already a scar on this branch. So I'm gonna try and make my scar look like that scar up here. And I do that simply by taking a sharp blade or pruners and disinfecting them first, of course, and scraping away the bark until I hit green. What I find works best is that you scrape a little bit further than where the branch is actually wounded. So if the branch is wounded like this, I'll scrape a little bit further than that so that I can blend the wound into the surrounding bark. So I'll do the same here. I'll take away all of this bark here, and if you look carefully, you can see where the branch was growing before I scraped it away. But now that I've scraped it away, it's all nice and smooth, and over time that will blend in. That green line will eventually turn brown, and it will become part of the overall texture of the tree. The other way that I like to hide my wire is by using moss. Moss grows amazingly on the north side of trees because there's usually more shade there and it holds moisture for longer. So on the north side of my bonsai mat, I like to put some sphagnum moss. What I'll often do is I'll take some cuttings from my moss, put them down on the north side of the tree, and then water the tree. That'll stop them from drying out. And then, after a few weeks, I'll start to tuck the moss into the branches and into the tree. And over time, the moss will grow and spread, and it will cover up my wire. And even if it doesn't cover up my wire completely, it'll cover up most of it and hide it amongst the green. Another technique that I really like to use, especially on the Chinese elm, because its bark is so thin and it prunes so easily, is something that I call air pruning. Now, this isn't really a new technique. People have been doing this for years. But what I like to do is I'll prune the tree in the summer when it is actively growing. So if I prune the tree in the summer, it will heal over really quickly. So I'll only have a very small scar compared to if I pruned it in the winter when it is dormant. Then I like to take my bonsai out into the rain. And if it rains a lot, it'll actually cause the buds to swell. And if you get heavy rain and strong winds, it will actually blow some of the leaves off the tree. So if you've got a young tree, you can actually lose a lot of foliage if it's a really wet, windy day. And that means that the tree has to grow new leaves, which means that it will have to produce more energy through photosynthesis. So that will mean that it will grow stronger and faster. Now, the reason why I like to use this method is because I then notice that it seems to stimulate more buds to grow. So it gives me more options when I come to prune and shape the tree next time. And it also means that the tree is healing all of the time. So if I've got a branch here and I prune it back here, well, that branch is going to heal over and it's going to be stronger and thicker because it has had all of that extra growth. And I think it encouraged more branching lower down the trunk, so that will give me more options in the future. The final thing that you need to consider with this style is your pot. With a minimalist design like this, you don't want to distract from the tree with an elaborate or busy pot. You want something simple. I like to use pots that have clean lines and a simple design. Sometimes I'll use ceramic pots, and sometimes I'll use plastic pots. I've got a few plastic pots here in the greenhouse. And honestly, you can't really tell the difference between plastic and ceramic from a distance, so I like to use these. They're cheap and they're cheerful, and they also don't weigh too much. One of the worst things about having a heavy ceramic pot is that if you're trying to style your tree and you need to move it around a little bit, that pot can be a real pain to move around. So I like to use these plastic pots, and I've got a few different ones here. So that's what I like to use for my minimalist style trees. A good example of this is this Chinese elm here. It's got a simple upright shape. There's not too many branches. I've tried to hide the wire within the branches, and I've used moss to help hide the wire that I've put around the trunk. And I've also got a nice simple pot. So altogether, it gives it a nice minimalist look. If you liked this video, please do leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And also let me know if there's any techniques that you use that I didn't mention. I'd love to hear about them. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I post videos every single week. And if you subscribe, you won't miss any of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.